You're listening to the What's Happening podcast with Gary Watts.
Good morning. I'm here with Jim Conard, who is the market president at West Bank, and we're going to talk about bikes, bicycling, getting in shape, all kinds of fun stuff today. So welcome, Jim. How are you?
Thanks, Gary. I'm wonderful. Excited to be here.
Great to have you. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about, I think it's always fun for our listeners to hear about how you got started, a little bit about your background. And why don't we start with that, and then we're going to get into cycling and trails and different kinds of bikes and all kinds of fun stuff. So let's just start with what got you interested?
Sure. Well, it's fun to start with this because I think it's kind of a funny story, and I think it's relatable to about anybody that's out there. So February of 2020, I'm approaching about 50 years old. My wife's really into exercise.
You don't look 50.
Well,
you don't look 50.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Jen, you've met Jen.
Right.
She does a lot of running. I had done some running, but really didn't consider myself to be all that fit. Definitely needed to do something. Decided to join a gym and do their 6-week fitness challenge. So February of 2020, right before the pandemic. So
what was the challenge?
It was a 6-week challenge where they measured your waist, measured your arms, plus there's nutrition components, and then you'd get points for the amount of workouts that you did. Yeah. So I was working out every day, eating all the right stuff, and I was kicking butt in the challenge. I had lost 14 pounds. I was going to win the challenge. We got up to the 5th week. It was mid-March of 2020, and the gym closed.
Oh, no.
So,
COVID.
COVID, yeah. So I was kind of in the lurch. I was real excited about what I did. But then the bank got real busy with PPP loans. I started watching Tiger King on Netflix, eating cheeseburgers, and I lost a lot of those gains. And kind of struggling with, like a lot of people were, what are you going to do during the pandemic? So mid-summer 2020, everybody's trying to find outdoor activities. I had a couple buddies that say, hey, let's go mountain biking. Well, A, there's no mountains in Iowa.
Yeah. Except for Sugar Bottom.
Yeah, now I've learned. We're going to talk all about this.
I'll be quiet.
We're going to talk. There's all kinds of mountain biking you can do. But at the time, I thought, really, mountain biking.
Iowa.
And then, B, I hadn't done anything for quite a while, so I was kind of out of shape again. And but found out after going mountain biking with these guys, the first time I went anywhere was Woodpecker single track, and it is in the middle of Coralville. It is literally 50 feet south of the Coralville Strip. So as you're going west on the Coralville Strip, you look to the left. There's some trees down there. Yep. There's a trailhead called Tom Harkin Trailhead.
There's a restroom facilities right there, right off the road.
Restrooms, picnic tables, very nice trailhead. And I had been there before, but just kind of to walk around the cement trails.
Right.
Well, it's a figure 8 trail system, 5 miles total, 2.5 miles in each direction from that trailhead of dirt single track riding. And it's very family oriented. I've taken Jen and Meadow there. My daughter Meadow's in 3rd grade. But it's also competitive and fast. You can ride it fast, too, if you're with your buddies and really wanting to get some exercise. So we did that, and right away I thought, this is really fantastic. Now, by the way, my bike, I hadn't touched a bike previous to that in 25 years.
What did you ride? Which bike did you ride?
I had a Giant Rainier, a 26-inch old bike. It had cracked tires, it had cobwebs all over it. I didn't know any different because it was a mountain bike. So we rode it. The buddies I had nicer bikes, and I said, obviously, I'm going to need to take this bike in and get it tuned up. And they said, actually, you're going to need a new bike. And I learned a lot about bikes since then, and technology has improved. You can do a lot to maximize your efficiency and speed and enjoyment of cycling. Plus, we've got 3 really good bike shops in the Iowa City area that were very helpful. I was always kind of rediscovering my joy of cycling. I had mountain biked way in the past. So my first job out of college was with the old Norwest Bank in the mid-'90s. And I went to the University of South Dakota, so they sent me to the Black Hills.
Is that jackrabbits or coyotes?
Coyotes.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Boy, that's like mixing up the Hawkeyes and the Cyclones.
I know. You don't
Coyotes,
want to do that.
USD, jackrabbits are South Dakota State, the big rivals. But yeah, so my first job out of school was in the Black Hills of South Dakota. They actually do have mountains, and I had done some mountain biking, and that's where I had picked up that bike. But it had moved with me throughout the years. I hadn't touched it for 25 years. but really didn't take too long to rediscover how awesome mountain biking was, particularly when I experienced that trail there, the Tom Harkin Trailhead.
Right.
Plus, if you've probably been out to Sugar Bottom Campground,
Yeah.
it's the nicest mountain biking track in all of Iowa. It's undisputed.
I'd say almost the Midwest. I shouldn't say that, but
well,
definitely Iowa.
It could very well be.
Because people come from the mountains and talk about Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, yep. They do, and it's they host events there, races. There's an organization locally called ICOR, Iowa City Coalition of Off-Road Riders, where it's all volunteers, and they maintain 13 and a half miles of very up and down trails. There's all kinds of features out there, logs that you can ride over and around, very rooty sections, some very strenuous sections, but also there's a beginner's loop for kids. There's all kinds of events out there through the year, and it didn't take me too long to say, hey, this is a hobby I am really happy to have rediscovered at this point. And since then, it's been fast forward for me. I think last year I did 18 races on either mountain bikes or gravel bikes or fat bikes. We can talk about those later. Joined a few different communities of cyclists that are just passionate, great people. Some of them have, like me, just kind of rediscovered cycling around the pandemic. Several of them have been cycling for years. But there's community groups that do different types of cycling, that go different places, and I found the community to be very welcoming despite my newness to it, but they're all great people, passionate about cycling, and they have a lot of knowledge of the different opportunities to cycle in the area.
So let's go back to the pandemic. So you were working at a gym, you had a challenge, and then what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And you know what? I think a lot of people had the same thing. I noticed our office is on Oakdale, I noticed there's people out walking now, and I see bikes go by. And I don't know what good the pandemic did, but I think it kind of taught us all to stay in shape or some kind of shape. Do something. Go for a walk. Go for a ride. And I think that's what the pandemic did to a lot of people. It's like, I got to get out and I got to get moving.
Yeah.
And it created that because what else are you going to do? You couldn't really go anywhere. You couldn't go to a movie. You couldn't go out to eat, whatever. I mean, it made you a recluse. So.
Right. If you were going to exercise, you couldn't do it in a gym anymore.
Right.
You couldn't do it with your friends sweating over,
Right.
the kettlebells or the weights. You had to do something on your own. It was kind of a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people on new ways to stay fit.
And I like it in a way because, I'm old now, and I didn't really start working out till about your age, doing anything. And, it's not good for you not to do something. So I think, the pandemic kind of shocked everybody because I think with the pandemic and COVID, I think if you stay in some kind of shape, you watch your diet, you're gonna get through it a lot easier.
Right.
Than another person that doesn't do anything.
Right.
So,
well, it's an opportunity to be competitive, too. I know you've done a variety of races, Ironman competitions. For a person like me that hadn't done really anything athletic for decades and didn't really 3 or 4 years ago consider myself to be an athletic or a competitive person.
Right.
Cycling offers that. Now, not everybody's going to be interested in doing races and competing. I would tell you that cycling in itself in the community is very inviting, whether you go 5 miles an hour or 15, 20 miles an hour. But for me, I was awakened to all the opportunities there are to do competitive cycling in the area. And that just kind of hit a chord with me. So there's all kinds of outstanding events, both locally and within a 50-mile radius, where you can race gravel bikes, you can race mountain bikes. This coming weekend, I'm racing a fat tire bike in the Quad Cities. If you get the competitive bug, you have a lot of opportunities in this area. And I think the way that that's really been beneficial for me is that you work out for a purpose then. You have a goal. Every time I'm looking at the next race. And also, it kind of inhibits my bad eating habits. So, I mean, I'm like everybody else. I like Taco Bell. I like Dunkin' Donuts. And I still do some of those sometimes. But I think twice about it if I know I've got a race coming up or if I'm trying to just basically keep up with my buddies. Those same guys that invited me in the first mountain bike race are still a group that I ride with. And we do a lot of races together. Well, I just think to myself, hey, I know those guys aren't eating a second donut or aren't going back for extra Taco Bell. I need to kind of watch my eating habits as well. So cycling and racing has been just real beneficial for me health-wise.
So tell us a little bit about your diet. What do you try to do? I mean, I know you're signing up for a lot of races, and it keeps you in shape because you got to, if you lay out a race schedule all year, I've got this, and this, and you're going to have a certain amount of training to get to that point. Talk a little bit about your diet when you're getting ready for a race or just staying in training.
Well, I'll give you kind of the full gamut of it. First of all, fortunately for me, my wife's very health conscious, and she cooks a lot at home and knows way more about the subject than I do. And I wish I had more information to share. But for me, it just boils down to the simplicity of it. I mean, at this point, I know what I can eat, and I can still, it makes me feel good, and I can still exercise and get good output and strength on a bike. I also know, maybe instead of having a number of, for example, beers at a tailgate, I might say, today I think I'm going to do 2, and then I'm going to switch to water, or go to instead of having a few Big Grove Easy Yetis, which I love, maybe I'll mix in a Busch Light every once in a while. I just, there's things that I just now make sure I'm limiting as far as calories or beers or whatever the case might be.
But think about when you're in public, and you're in the public all the time, and you speak all the time.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do in public? It's lunch, dinner, cocktails, whatever. So how do you substitute that? You mentioned water.
Right.
That's cool. But you think about everything socially, that's all we do.
Right, yep.
We go for a lunch, we go for this. You might tell people now, if you want to meet me, you got to go for a bike ride.
Right. I did as many activities on bikes with customers in the past year as I did on the golf course.
Yeah.
So it used to be, if you were entertaining customers, you do it exclusively on the golf course, really kind of for athletic type things. But you'd be amazed at how many people I know of that are business people, business leaders, community leaders that also do biking. So there's been a lot of that. I'll also tell you, this is kind of neat news. The fastest growing segment in the beer industry is non-alcoholic beverages.
Huh.
So I still like my regular Big Grove beers, etc. But my wife's really into kind of researching this, and we've got a refrigerator half full of a variety of non-alcoholic beers or seltzers. And so I like to mix some of those in.
Right.
Also, there's companies in the area that are very nutrition and workout food conscious. So there's a company called Evolve in the IRL that's right next to Tribute, right across from 30 Hop. And when I was doing that exercise challenge at Versa Fitness, by the way, they reopened after the pandemic, so I do go back there now.
Good.
But I went into Evolve and got a diet plan, and they really helped kind of jumpstart my fitness challenge for that 6 weeks. And I'm not an expert on how they do it, but I do know, and my wife was kind of sharing with me some of what she knows, they all of the ingredients in the meals that they prepare are absolutely health conscious. There's nothing that goes into them that is a waste of food or that is an ingredient that wouldn't benefit you health-wise. So there is some cost to it. I mean, honestly, when you go to a place like that, that food isn't cheap, but it's not overly expensive either. And it was a perfect way for me to really jumpstart that 6-week good, healthy eating that really then made me realize, hey, I can do this. I lost, like I said, 14 pounds. I was enjoying going to the gym every day. I didn't feel that my age was prohibiting me from making gains. So both the eating and the regular exercising were very helpful.
What did you eat? Did you eat more protein, or they just had a balanced diet in a smaller portion?
It's all balanced. So the Evolve meals were, you could choose from a variety, and each one was specifically tailored towards a variety of meat and vegetables. So, for example, if you were to have a pasta meal, maybe it wouldn't be pasta noodles. It would be squash or
spinach,
rice noodles. Yeah, right. There was just substitutes that I would tell you still taste good. I'd tell you if they didn't, and I wouldn't be talking about it. But for me, the meals tasted great. They were very specifically health conscious, and within about 4 or 5 days, I could tell this is really something, and I'm really onto it. Since then, I've gone back periodically and got some of those meals, but mostly I've just been focusing on just eating, just making good choices, relatively speaking, on a fairly consistent basis. I'm not perfect. If I've got friends and family and staff that I work with to listen to this, they're going to know I steal a donut every once in a while or do some things. But
we all do.
Yeah, not perfect. But in general, I think the cycling has really helped kind of refocus. Hey, there's a reason why I don't want to let the diet go. And I do have goals to be competitive again this summer in the cycling race scene. And therefore, it makes you kind of think twice about your diet choices.
But the neat thing about the diet and then starting to cycle was you had some kind of a challenge where you went to the 6-week challenge.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to motivate people to do something. But I think that's pretty neat to share your story that, hey, I just looked at this. I want to do something. I'm getting about 50, and I'm going to knock it out. And you did. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Let's talk about diet a little bit because that's the hardest part of it, I think. the training's tough, the intervals are tough, long rides are tough. But to me, hardest is just, something you got to get up, you got to think about every day. You got to drink a certain amount of water. You got to eat a certain amount. It's every meal. Yeah. And you got to be careful with it. Right. because I used to think, well, I can go ride for X and I can eat what I want. Well, not really. You can't
outwork out a bad diet. So I keep talking about my wife, Jen, who's really helps because she said, Jim, you can't outwork a bad diet. Right. So I don't want to waste the workout. Right. So, I mean, if you go on your long runs or you're doing your biking, it just seems like such a waste to come back and eat something that's ineffective.
So, a Peloton, you get 600, 700, 800 calories. It says you burned that, and then you go have a cheeseburger. It's like, well, I got to go get on the Peloton another hour. I just put that back in my system.
Exactly.
So, no, but it's hard to do. So, well, let's get into biking. You had some things to share, and I think a lot of people understand a road bike, a normal bike. I don't know if that's normal or not. A road bike is a lot different than a tri-bike. But you have a road bike, and maybe start with road bike, maybe go to gravel, fatties, mountain biking, just maybe the different kinds of bikes, and then maybe we can get into some of the websites you want to share. Because when I started to look at it, with what you sent me, like the Bike Iowa City website, there's some fantastic websites and areas to go recreate. And we got great trails. We got great gravel trails. And, just speaking of gravel briefly, I didn't do that till like maybe 3 years ago, and it's peaceful. It's beautiful. There's no traffic. And you can just get out there on a Sunday morning and just go, and it's a different kind of ride, and it's usually more hills involved because it's steeper than asphalt roads. But there's so many diverse types of cycling. So maybe just take off on that subject.
Well, my story with the different kinds of cycling is also kind of humorous. So I got into mountain biking with my friends.
You started with that.
And a couple of these friends had 3 or 4 bikes. And I thought, that's ridiculous. Who needs more than one bike? So
they're expensive.
Yeah, they are. Well, I quickly found out. So went on a gravel ride with my mountain bike. Oh. And had a couple of guys that were in really good shape, and they had nice gravel bikes. So I quickly discovered I was pedaling my tail off to go 14 miles an hour. And these other guys were just relaxed riding, kind of waiting for me at every corner. Right. A good gravel pace is maybe 20 miles an hour. And I learned quickly the vast differences between a mountain bike's efficiency on gravel and a gravel bike's efficiency on gravel. And then right away thought, okay, now I'm excited about gravel riding. Because like you said, if you're on your own, it's therapeutic. But I found that to be my favorite kind of group rides. We'll get to the Bike Iowa City things in a little bit, but there are a number of group gravel rides that leave on Monday nights after work, on Wednesday nights after work from different areas in Iowa City, North Liberty, and they're my favorite. The Monday night gravel group is a relaxed group. They leave at World of Bikes, head down either south or east of Iowa City. They end up at Big Grove, and the group of maybe 25, 30 people, and you just talk and you visit. You might get 20 or 25 miles in, which I don't want people that listen to this to just tune out right away because that seems like a lot of miles, but the pace is a comfortable pace, and the group, it's a no-drop ride, which means they know how many people take off, and every couple miles there's a sweeper that goes, that's an experienced rider, that's the last rider. Make sure that if, somebody's on their first ride or they're younger or more novice in riding, they don't get lost, they don't get separated from the group. It's just a real enjoyable type of ride. And you can do that with a bike you got off Facebook Marketplace, or you can go to one of the bike shops and say, hey, I'm interested in this kind of riding, want to join this outstanding cycling community, and go from there.
Tell the folks what's the difference between a mountain bike and like a gravel bike.
Yeah.
They may not know that.
The size of tire.
Okay.
The gravel bike, so a road bike has a skinny tire.
Right.
And so I do RagBrive, and RagBrive the last few years, and it has just a skinny tire where just a little bit, you pump up the tire to 100 or 110 PSI. So the tire is also very hard, and just a little bit of the tire touches the road, so you have as little friction as possible. Fastest bike you can get. A gravel bike is the next smallest tire, but it's wide enough to be comfortable on gravel. As you know, in Iowa, in the spring when they put new gravel on roads, it can be kind of bumpy, but you typically ride about 40 PSI, 35 to 40 PSI, so it's softer tire, a little bit wider, but very efficient yet. So it's still it's maybe a 38 millimeter wide tire, whereas a mountain bike it might be about 2.5 inches wide. Then the next.
So you're not going to work as hard on a gravel bike as a mountain bike.
Right. Yeah.
And when you had your
less,
mountain bike
much
and the
less.
other guys had a gravel bike, they weren't working as hard.
Right, exactly. Yep.
And
They
you're-
were. Yep. They had a much more efficient bike, much less tire touching. So a mountain bike's got a lot more tread to it
Right.
because you're going to go over roots, rocks, up. You have to climb steep angles. Mountain bikes take a lot of abuse, I call it, when you're on the trails because you have to ride over a lot of different types of surfaces.
Right.
Whereas gravel bikes are tailored towards there's some climbing and some descending, but gravel is typically much more consistent of a surface than mountain biking. So very different bikes. I've learned a ton about it, and it's fun to have both for different purposes.
Great. So now you got the rides, you got the gravel ride. What other rides are there? Tell us about. Go on to you got the road bike. You got RAGBRAI, of course. And by the way, RAGBRAI, I think it's the 50th anniversary this year.
That's right, a big year. They're going to announce the route this weekend.
Yeah.
And there's some excitement. It's been a while since it's been in our area. There's a lot of hopeful people that somehow the right route ends up coming our way. You never know. But
Never know.
it helps when it does. It's sure nice to be a local rider because you've got somewhere to stay, and the community sure supports RAGBRAI in our area.
Speaking of RAGBRAI, to not get off the subject too much, but I've done that several times too. And I rode with Livestrong when Armstrong was out running around.
Yeah.
And we contributed money to cancer research. And the cool thing is the group contributed over $100,000 and then rode. And then the key thing was you're going to get to be able to ride with Lance.
Yeah.
So
One experience.
yeah. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go out there because I want to see Lance. And so during the week, I saw him. He had a motorhome, but I didn't get to ride with him. And so some of the guys did. And so at the last of the week, it was Friday afternoon, he was going to be shuttled off to Tour de France because I think he was sponsored a team or is in between his, I don't know which circuit he was on, but he wasn't in the Tour de France. But he was going to be shipped away, and we only had so many minutes. So we're in Independence, Iowa, and they're kind of telling us, hey, today ride up to see Lance, and then pull back after he's talked to him, said hi to him, then pull back. At least if you had your shot with Lance. So I thought, well, I'm going to get right in there. Of course, when he took out of town, he's 22, 23, and if you ride bikes, that's moving.
Yeah.
And he doesn't slow down because to him, he's probably crawling at 22, 23. And I'm sweating, and I look and I could see as we get out of town, we only had about an hour. So I go, oh, I can't fiddle around. I got to get into this group. And I'd see a group get to him, then fall back, a group get to him. And I was kind of in the back trying to get up there. And then all of a sudden, it was getting close. I was looking at my watch, well, I don't know where he's at. I can't see him. I know there's only 10 or 15, 20 minutes left, and he's going to be gone. They're just going to go get him and fly him off. And all of a sudden, I'm going up a pretty good incline, and I was kind of slowed down, 16, 17, and creeping up, kind of whining, oh, maybe he went on, maybe he's gone. And guess what? I get a push in my back, and I'm kind of huh? And I got another pretty good push, and I kind of raised my arm up. I was like, who is this? I was going to shrug him off a little. And I look up, and it was Lance Armstrong.
Wow.
So the funny part of that story is we got 15, 20 minutes together just at the end. Yeah. And we rode together, and we talked. We had a blast. And how much fun he has with RAGBRAI. He loves RAGBRAI.
Right. Yeah.
He's talking a little bit about the Tour de France and some other things. He goes to a place in Hawaii that we go to near it. And all of a sudden, there was a gravel road. There's a big black SUV there, and he pulled off, and it was it.
It was it.
He was gone. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, well, if you're into bikes, how cool would it be to ride with Lance Armstrong? I got that chance, and we were rolling, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He didn't just kind of baby me up the hill; he was pushing me.
I haven't heard from a whole lot of people that had the chance to talk to him like you did, but I've heard stories on RAGBRAI from people that were on the ride. Yeah. And all of a sudden, there's just a whoosh of about half a dozen to a dozen bikes. Yeah. And it was Lance and his group just flying by people. So.
And they fly by. They don't just socially ride. When they ride, they ride.
Yeah. Yep.
But that was my. But I don't want to get off subject. But I thought it might be enjoyable to hear.
Well, it's kind of a nice segue. So obviously, RAGBRAI is the largest cycling event in Iowa. The second largest cycling event in Iowa is based out of Iowa City. It's called Core 4 Gravel.
Great.
And it was in its first year last year. So it's just the brainchild of some local cycling leaders. And we'll talk about Bike Iowa City here in a little bit. But what I'm excited to talk about is that cycling in Iowa City isn't just growing organically, just letting it happen. There's actually groups in Iowa City that have that want to promote Iowa City as the Midwest's premier city for cycling. And one of their efforts is called Core 4 Gravel. Well, there's a race down in Arkansas called Rule of 3, where they race one bike on 3 different surfaces: gravel, single track, and pavement. Well, the Iowa City race is called Core 4 because in Iowa you've got gravel roads, you've got pavement, and we've got some outstanding single track. But there's what's called used to call them old dirt roads when I was growing up. Grandparents lived on a farm. Level B roads. Yep. So that's the 4th surface. They call it Core 4. So this group of people in Iowa City, the leaders are Alex Bumeyer. He's in the Parks and Rec department for the city of Coralville. Nate Kohlbaum is the manager of Sugar Bottom Bikes up in North Liberty. And Liz Hubing works at ICAD, so the Iowa City Area Development. They were the founders of this Bike Iowa City, which came up with this Core 4 gravel race. And last year was the first year of it. They had over 600 racers come from all over because of the marketing they did for it. Plus, it's a unique type of ride. There's not a lot of races where you can combine different surfaces into one race and one bike. But Iowa City has that. So you start at Wilson's Apple Orchard, and you roll out for about 15 miles. You're on gravel roads, or you go through some grassy double track through some fields, then through some B roads where you're really trying to just hold on to your bike because it's fairly bumpy. More gravel, some pavement. Then it drops into the Sugar Bottom Campground single track. And that's where things really kind of get crazy, and it was very appealing to a lot of these racers that are used to racing either on roads or on gravel. Well, the type of bike that most of the racers had were gravel bikes, which have currently the drop bars. You're familiar with it, but for your listeners that might not know, so mountain bikes have flat bars where you're just holding onto a flat bar. Road bikes and gravel bikes have the drop bars. Well, that's hard to control on a single track where you're going up and down, you're going over roots and rocks and tight switchbacks. So that kind of being my background for riding was kind of fun to excel in that portion while I was kind of watching some of the folks with less mountain biking experience struggle with that. And of course, they were stronger than me on the gravel and the pavement. But that event, like I said, drew over 600 cyclists in its first year, immediately became the 2nd largest cycling event in Iowa. And the same group is already in the planning. You can register for this race. It's at core4gravel.com. And I think they have a goal quietly of having over 1,000 racers come from over. Last year, in the first year, there were racers from over 25 states. This year, in the second year, if they can double participation, I mean, they might, I don't know how many states will be represented, but there's elite cyclists. The finish was a photo finish, exciting finish to the race. There was a 50-mile and a 100-mile race. I just did the 50-mile, just being still relatively new. You might know it. So cycling takes years to build up real leg strength. I feel like I'm into it now, but I still am building up the base leg strength that some of these people that have been biking for years have. But the 100-mile race was fantastic to watch. I was just finishing 50-mile race when the leaders came through for the 100-mile race. There's just elite cyclists that came. Heck of a fun finish. And then afterwards at Wilson's Apple Orchard, just a huge festival. There was sponsors there from Red Bull, other large national sponsors, and a lot of local sponsors as well. But heck of a fun event. And for people that just came to watch it, it was fun. Right. And then for those of us that raced it, it was really so. It's going to be a fun event that's going to attract a lot of people. It's in August. Yeah, it's in August.
So hopefully be warm and get a workout in.
Yeah, it was hot this year, so that was kind of became the challenge for most people. But you just got to prepare for it. There's always something. I mean, as you know, with your the big with Ironman, long races, not everything goes perfectly the whole time. Right. My situation was I took 2 water bottles because it's a 50-mile race and it was going to take me over 4 hours. Well, during the single track part, one of my water bottles fell out of my cage, so I was down to 1 water bottle for 4 hours of racing. So I about couldn't make it through once I got out of Sugar Bottom. But there are aid stations. I refilled my 1 bottle. One of them had a can of Coke that I could drink. That was key. I kind of learned something there. But it's a well-organized event that got people through, even if you didn't plan well enough or had an incident like me where I kind of lost one of my methods of hydration.
So it's a 50 and 100. Is there a 25 too?
I believe there's a 25. There's also a team relay. There's a lot of it. I need to look at that. Yeah, it's core4gravel.com, and you can register for, I believe there is just a variety of distances. I need to look at it more, but I'm excited about it. It was probably one of the best bike racing experience I've had, especially for a group that's just put it on for the first year.
One thing I want to tell people, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is when you're first starting to cycle, or you're first starting to run, or you're doing triathlon, whatever, or you're going to the gym, people welcome that. Sometimes people feel like, I don't want to go to the gym, I'm out of shape. I'm walking around the track, some of these guys are looking in the mirror, pumping iron, whatever they're doing, and you feel intimidated. But the thing they have to understand is everybody started somewhere. Yeah. And the neat thing about cycling or whatever you're doing is no matter what speed you are, no matter what you're doing, other cyclists, even if they're really fast or champions, are going to welcome that because they started somewhere and they just want to encourage people to do something. Yeah. And I think people have to understand that it's you got to start somewhere. And the community, no matter what community, swimming's another one, they just want to see you out there doing it. Right. They're not going to chastise you, well, you're out of shape, you just start. People are going, great, I'm glad to see you here. Yeah. I know the gym that I go to and I do some lifting and whatnot, is that they're always great to see other folks there.
Right.
Speaking of that, do you want to talk a little bit, I want to get into, do you train anything in the gym lifting right now or just cycle?
Yeah, so I hadn't for a while. So last summer, so the cycling racing season goes from about April to October. Right. Then the holidays came around, but now I've been more active in the gym. So I'm just doing cross training. So there's some different types of upper body lifting. I'm not an expert on how to optimize cycling performance relative to upper body, et cetera, but I just want variety. I think after kind of last year focusing on leg strength, doing a lot of things cycling related, especially with encouragement, my wife too, Jen, is kind of saying, hey, you want full body strength, you want core strength. Right. There were some races I did that were 50-mile races or longer races that I noticed I was starting to have a little bit of back pain, and I think that was due to lack of core strength. So cross training is important. And I am starting to mix more of that into my training.
Right, squats, things like that, open quads, get them stronger. And, I think it's important to have a little bit of that, especially in the off season. Let's talk. You're talking about the Core 4 race, which is bringing in folks from all over. Let's talk about international race, which I don't know if people realize this, but the Jingle Cross.
Yes,
it's usually around Thanksgiving.
Right.
And I think the World Championship was here last year.
It was, yeah.
And it's in November.
Yep. Right.
And can you tell us a little bit about? That's probably more like a gravel bike, a cross bike, and it's out at the 4-H
fairgrounds, county fairgrounds, right?
And the first time I saw that, I thought, "What? Are you kidding me?" The level of
when it was here, I call it the best kept secret, and I wish it wasn't a secret. And the bad news on this is it now has been discontinued. So it was hosted by the UCI, the large worldwide governing body for cycling, and the world's top cyclists competed in it. So some of the folks you'd see at the top 5 of the Tour de France were here in Iowa City racing that Jingle Cross. So I did a few. There's several levels of cycling categories that you can race in. Obviously, those pros race in Category 1, the elite professional. They go down to Cat 5. That was my first year cycling, so I did Cat 5, the lowest you could get, just to kind of be able to enjoy racing on the same course as those guys. But what we do have, though, is because of this, so it's called cyclocross. So Jingle Cross was the name of the race because if it's proximity to Christmas, they called it Jingle Cross here. But now cyclocross is still very prevalent in Johnson County. There were races this year held in 3 locations. One of them is City Park. Maybe show some pictures later, but I got a picture. I was doing a race in City Park. There was a race at Creekside Ballparks, right on the border of Coralville and Tiffin. Okay. And then there was a cyclocross race. I was at Bobbers up north in North Liberty. And those are hosted by local volunteers. A lot of them work at the bike shops here in town. For that, you can just grab a gravel bike, or there's some folks that do mountain bikes and those. That's the kind of racing. I call it kind of goofy racing. You jump over barriers. You might go up and down steps.
Yeah, you're carrying your bike.
You pick up and carry your bike. You can pick up. They call it shouldering, where you got your bike on your shoulder. I should have sent a picture. It's an unusual kind of racing that you typically don't do for mountain biking, road biking, or gravel. But cyclocross, that's what makes it interesting. So there are several of those races in town, and there's some experts here locally. I think. There's a gentleman that's named Jim Cochran that's a very accomplished local cyclist. I believe he was this year's national champion in his age group. Maybe it was 55 plus. I don't know him personally, but I know that he's legendary in the area. And then several of the folks that host these races locally have a lot of experience racing on the national, even international scene.
So like Bob or just in the parking lot or outside the parking lot, you might come through the parking lot and go through sand at the volleyball court, and then you go back up steps. You go right around trees. So you got to have a lot of bike knowledge. You got to have bike maneuvering.
Right.
It isn't just riding; it's technical, but fun. And talk about getting you in shape.
And there's always a party afterwards.
Oh,
so
yeah,
bobbers,
I'm sure.
they've got the grill in there. There's people with cowbells cheering you on.
Yeah.
Kind of a part of this. You mentioned community, and I didn't jump in like I maybe should have there, but I'd say it's next level. Not only are people just kind of welcoming to new cyclists, I found that there is something for everyone in this cycling community, and the community knows that the more people that are interested, the better. And the fact that Iowa City is actively trying to promote itself as the Midwest's premier city for cycling isn't a secret. And the Bike Iowa City group has 25 ambassadors. I was an ambassador last year for their first year. Now they've got a new group of 25 ambassadors. These people actually go out and look for people that might be listening now. They're thinking, I rode a bike 20 years ago, but I've ridden forever. I'm thinking about getting into shape and doing something, but I don't know how to begin. BikeIowaCity.com has got events, different kinds of rides for all levels, different ways to meet people that are into cycling, that are, if you just say hello, someone's going to reach out to you there and say, well, come with our group or ride with us, and here's somebody new. And I've just been amazed at how welcoming the city is. And it's not just events, too. So the cities themselves, Coralville, Tiffin, North Liberty, Iowa City, are also actively investing in trails, cement trails, dirt trails, maps, for all ages, families, accomplished cyclists. I mean, there's a concerted effort going on to make Iowa City, the area, the premier center for cycling in the Midwest. So.
And Coralville is going to hook up all the way to Tiffin, and Tiffin's going to Kent Park. I think through Johnson County is going to go to Kent Park, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
So maybe we pull
trails.
up. You want to pull up Bike Iowa City?
Sure, you bet.
Austin, can you pull up Bike Iowa City? Because I think, looking at that website, like Jim said, it's got everything on it, and I think that people would like to see that.
Right. Yeah. This is hosted by ICAD, Iowa City Area Development. Also, Think Iowa City, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau. It's kind of a joint effort. And there are also at least 25 volunteers here that act as Iowa ambassadors, and this is the group that they operate under. So maybe just click right. I mean, there's all kinds of things. We could talk about this for an hour, but I'll just skip over a few things here.
And for our audio listeners here, we are pulling up a couple websites and a few photos. So if you are just listening to the podcast via audio, make sure you can check out the video version of the podcast by searching What's Happening Podcast on YouTube or going to our website, wattsgroupiowa.com/podcast.
Thanks, Austin. I mean, so you could just click on either. So on the website, they talk about road, ride, and paved trail adventures. You've got on here different pictures of where you can go, different maps, rides. You
can also you can get a trail map. You can also put GPS.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're out in gravel and you're going, I don't know where I'm at here by Lone Tree or South Iowa City, you can put it on your phone and just use
You
GPS.
can get as high tech as you want. I just consider myself to be average with technology, but the best resource for me has been the local bike shops. I use Sugar Bottom Bikes, Jeff's Bike and Ski, and World of Bikes the most. I've also been up to Briar Ridge Bikes in Solon. If you walk in there and start asking about GPS, bike computers and things, each of those stores it'll be very helpful. There's the list of all the bike shops in the area. But on here, you've got pictures that are along the way for each of these routes. You've got different types of maps that show you where you can go. I mean, just an excellent resource.
Different kinds of rides, different areas, Coralville, North Liberty, Tiffin, bike shops, events. What's it say on events? Group rides. It's got, like you talked about, your group rides coming up.
There we go. So, I think... let's click on maybe World of Bikes down there. I like so the Monday Night Gravel starts at World of Bikes, and it's Monday nights right after work, and they go for an hour or two. Like I said, they end up at Big Grove. Right. That's a community of very welcoming people that I've really enjoyed. Once I got into that, then on Wednesday nights, if you maybe go back, Austin, to the Sugar Bottom Bikes website, Wednesday nights, there's a group ride that leaves from Sugar Bottom, and that's a drop ride where the goal is exercise. So I didn't do this right away, but towards when I started to get a better base of fitness, and when I learned more how to use my bike computer, I could put in their route beforehand so that if I happen to be last or kind of get disconnected from the group, I've got the route on my computer. But that group's faster. Great
It goes
exercise.
from North Liberty?
Yeah, that one leaves from Sugar Bottom Bikes. So
Where do you go to Sutliff, Solon?
yeah, they'd have a different route each Wednesday night, and a lot of times you go out to west towards kind of some recreational areas. Goes up north, way past Bobbers. There's this excellent system of gravel roads from both World of Bikes heading south and east, and from Sugar Bottom Bikes heading west and north.
Tell us what a drop ride is for the folks.
Yeah, a drop ride means you prepare yourself to have both water, food, and bike computer, so you know how to get where you're going, and a pump or a CO2 cartridge that can refill your tires if they flatten a little bit. You basically want to be able to be self-sufficient. A no drop ride, which is more the Monday night from World of Bikes, they've got a sweeper. That's somebody that's going to go last. And if you have trouble and you're just going slower, that sweeper just sticks with you the whole time, helps you out, gets you whatever they can do to help make you comfortable. So the no drop rides are great for people that are getting started. And then the drop rides are for ones where, hey, if you want to go fast, try to keep up with a fast group, it's a fun thing to do. I consider it a challenge. And was really happy when I was able to kind of keep up with the group. So it's kind of a nice accomplishment.
Yeah. So I think I stayed in one of the fast groups maybe for about 2 miles on the way to Hills. And I'm really going with these guys. I mean, they were moving.
Yeah.
So it
well,
depends
and
on
there's
the group.
fast guys too, and ladies in the no drop rides. What they do though is they'll wait. So they'll go 5 miles super fast and then wait at an intersection. And then let everybody catch up, talk, hang out a little bit, take some water. Then they take off and go really fast again. So there's fast people in all the groups. It's a lot of fun.
But don't be intimidated not to get started because there's all kinds of groups.
Absolutely. Yep. So. I'm talking from the perspective of a guy that hadn't touched a bike for 25 years, started with very basic level of fitness, and now here I am 2 years later kind of promoting this and talking about how fun it is. There's something for everyone. So.
But I highly encourage everybody to get on a Bike Iowa City website.
Yeah, it's the best resource.
Yep. It is. It definitely is. Let's talk about, so we got gravel bikes, we got road bikes, we've got mountain biking, and then I want to get into fat tire because that's kind of the craze.
One of my favorites.
but let's go back to mountain bike briefly and talk about the Sugar Bottom trails, which people don't, you talk about Iowa. Iowa's flat, it's level, it's just cornfield. And then on a bike, and then you go, have you been to Sugar Bottom and been on the trail? So tell us a little bit about your experience there and mountain biking.
Yes, well, it's 13 and a half miles of trail systems, and trail systems are rated green, blue, and black, depending on the skill level needed to ride them.
Like a ski slope.
It's got all three. Yeah, like similar. And it's very well maintained. There's a strong group of volunteers from the group called ICOR, Iowa City Coalition of Off-Road Riders. You pay $20 a year for your membership, and then that gives you the ability to ride the trails whenever you want, but also you get emails about trail maintenance days if you want to participate in that. But these trails are widely considered the best in Iowa. They host two, I think, the premier races in Iowa every year. There's the Sugar Bottom Scramble and the Sugar Cubed Marathon. Basically, you ride the trail system 3 times so that's why they call it Sugar Cubed. But those races are well attended from people that come many miles to race those. Very competitive, great events. They're hosted by our local bike shops and by ICOR. And I consider it now kind of where I've regrown up biking. I probably ride those trails 50 times each in the summer just because they're such great trails. You're in the trees in Iowa. It's therapeutic. Also, it's the safety of it's very. I mean, in mountain biking, you're generally riding maybe 8 to 12 miles an hour. I mean, I've crashed before, but you're maybe falling onto some shrubbery or greenery. You're not going 25 miles an hour. There's no cars. It's a safe way of cycling. Of course, I wear my helmets and sometimes some pads if I know I'm going to try to exert myself and go as fast as possible. But fantastic that we've got that amenity right here in Iowa City. Like I said, people come from all over to ride Sugar Bottom.
I'm glad you mentioned helmet. No matter what you're doing, what age, I don't care where you're going. I don't care if you're going down the street and back. Put a helmet on.
Absolutely.
I've seen some pictures of people that have fallen, and you definitely want a helmet on.
Yeah, it's a must-do.
It is.
You hardly ever see anybody without them anymore, and it's just that's a no-brainer.
And so we got the mountain biking, and that's great exercise. Some of the strongest triathletes that I were around as far as a bike were mountain bikers.
I think so. You see a lot of athletic people. I don't want to stereotype the different kinds of cyclists, but there's a special kind of people that go to mountain bike. They're tough people.
Yeah,
I mean, mountain biking is hard. It's also the most enjoyable. So you don't have to do it fast.
Right.
But if you race mountain bikes, which I really enjoy, it's hard and it's very competitive. Hard. And the field, when I kind of toe in the starting line for these mountain bike races, I look around, I think there's some elite athletes here. And I did a couple of races where there were maybe 1,000 people in the race, and maybe there were 100 people that were really elite mountain bikers, but there was maybe 300 next of the people that were elite athletes. You could tell they'd worked out a lot. They were in very good shape. But mountain biking takes a specific kind of fitness and shape. The people that were, some of the people I saw struggling to complete the races were people that were in outstanding shape, but weren't experienced mountain bikers. So I think mountain biking is special to me. It kind of takes some extra effort and energy, but I think that makes it even more rewarding to be at those races. As mentioned, I'm kind of toeing the starting line for some of those races. I like to kind of check my heart rate monitor. It's so exciting. And for somebody that hadn't done anything athletically competitive for decades, it's a high. There's a reason why you do the races you do, and I hadn't had that feeling for about 20 years, and I love it. Now that's why I do these mountain
bikers. You can tell if they have a pair of shorts on, their quads are about twice the size of a normal person's quads.
They are. Yep.
I got one of my sugar bottom stories, which I shouldn't say, is when I was mountain biking one day with a friend. I got passed by a single speed on a. It wasn't a mountain bike. I might have been a fatty. And he went right by me. I thought, oh, I better pick it up a little. Let's talk about a single speed. A lot of people don't realize there's. I think the professor at the University of Iowa, was it McGuire? Thunder McGuire, they call him, I think.
I'm not familiar.
Steve McGuire. Anyway, he makes a single track, or not single track, but single speed bikes. But a lot of people don't realize that they're kind of like a fat tire, and there's only one speed. Right. And there's a huge group of people around here that ride those. And to me, that's amazing. They're a heavy bike, heavier, and one speed.
Right. I think it's crazy.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I use all my gears.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, that takes us even more. I mean, I talked about how mountain biking takes a tough type of cyclist, but single speed, where you have one speed, no matter if you're going up a steep incline or you're trying to pedal your tail off going down. It takes a special group. But most of the mountain bike races that I competed in had a single speed division. And there are some local folks that race on teams locally that specialize in single speed racing. So it's not for me, though. I like switching down to granny gear when I'm going straight uphill, or really trying to still be in control with the pedals when I'm going downhill. So
they're amazingly strong. If you can think about one speed, that's like when I was a kid. That's all you had is one speed.
I think if you've been cycling as an avid competitive cyclist for 10 years or more and you're looking for something different, that's maybe when I'd recommend getting in a single speed. But it's going to be a while before I feel like that's a challenge I want to take.
Let's do our favorite topic here. Let's talk about fat tires. So
sure.
2 or 3, 4 years ago, what is that? Is that something you ride on the beach? Or I saw these fat tire bikes. Of course, I went down and got one, and I was just like a little kid in a candy store. I rode it for a couple blocks. I said, this is fun, man. Yeah. You flatten out your tires. You can feel the road. It's heavy. It's a workout, but if you want to tell the folks a little bit about fat tires.
Yeah, what's the way to cycle year-round? The cycling season is only what the weather will let you do if you have road, gravel, or regular mountain bikes. Otherwise, you're stuck indoors cycling or having to do something else. But the fat tire bikes are so versatile. You see them on the beaches in Florida or the Gulf Coast or wherever there's beaches, you see people riding them. But for Iowa, you can ride fat tire bikes on both snow and mud. So a lot of times in the early spring and the late fall, there's kind of muddy seasons that you can't ride on much gravel, and you certainly can't ride on dirt single track. But a fat tire bike's got about a 4-inch to 5-inch tire. And if you're riding on freshly fallen snow, you might let so much air out of your tire that you're riding on 2, 3, 4 per square inch, pressure per square inch. So really squishy tires. They call that flotation. It's kind of like flotation on an inner tube. But you see people that are ahead of you on such rides where their tires are nearly flat. There's maybe only an inch for the rim of their bike down to the snow, and that's how they stay above the snow and make it on the trail. So the city of Coralville, in partnership with I-Corps, own a trail groomer, and they use that groomer on the woodpecker trails, which is that Camp Cardinal trailhead on Camp Cardinal Boulevard, 5 miles. And I tell you, I smile from ear to ear on that 5 mile. It's figure 8 type loop. Yeah. It's kind of the most enjoyable type of biking there is. I really enjoy it.
My first track on Fatty in the snow was I showed up and I had probably 6 to 8 pounds of air in my tires. Usually you run them at 10 or 12 or 14, at most probably 14. And I thought, well, I'm just going to get out there, and it was a little icy. And I went about a half a block, and I go, this isn't right. So I come kind of after I fell maybe twice. And I said, I came back in the parking lot. I'm kind of looking around, going, what's going on? And I saw some other guys getting on their bikes. I said, hey, by the way, how much air do you have in your tires? And they said, 2 to 3 pounds.
2, yeah.
and you get on in the parking lot just to get to the trail, you almost can't ride them. But then when you get on a trail, it just picks it up. You float, like you said, and it's a blast. But make sure you got your pressure right.
Right, yep. Well, that's a trial and error, but that's what I've learned. I've been amazed how low you go.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. But, yeah, I've done it before where I walk my bike from the parking lot over to where the snow starts and then get on it and start riding, because otherwise it can be fairly slippery. Now, they do make tires that have studded tires, so you could do both.
Right.
But the studs add quite a bit of weight to the tire, and it kind of sometimes sinks you down to the snow more. They don't really help you on snow, so I do have some tires that are studded tires where if it's mostly icy, where the snow has been really packed and I still want to go biking, I'll put on studded tires, and those will help you navigate kind of the icy corners and things. But the best kind of cycling in the snow is just regular fat bike tires where you're on a groomed trail. And again, it's another area where the city of Coralville and I-Corps really are kind of proactive with finding ways for people. Those trails are well traveled. So there's one segment. You're on Strava, so so Strava is an app for cyclists. It's kind of like Facebook for cyclists, where you can share your rides and you can talk to people that are also in the same area. They also track different segments, so you can go on a trail, and Strava will tell you how many people have gone on that trail ever with their Strava app on. Well, one of the segments in Woodpecker has been ridden over 10,000 times.
Wow.
And City of Coralville knows that. They are proud that it's that widely used by all kinds of cyclists and families. But that's, I think, encouraged them to expand that trail system. In the last 12 months, the trail system's gone from that Camp Cardinal Boulevard, extended all the way out to the Creekside ballparks, way out east of town. There's dirt trails that connect those now with bridges, rolling features. And a lot of those trails are maintained in the winter by those groomers. So you can ride your fat bike 5 miles round trip, which takes a good hour sometimes. And if you have more time than that, then you take more groomed trails all the way out to the Creekside ballparks. It's really something. Most communities, wouldn't have promoted the trails, expanded their trail systems, take the time and effort to groom them with bridges in the summer, groomers in the winter. But I tell you, City of Coralville, City of Iowa City, and this I-Corps group, Bike Iowa City, there's a real concerted effort here to have whatever it is that you're interested in, there's something for you in cycling. And you don't have to be an experienced cyclist. You just raise your hand and say, I'm interested in doing this, and it's easy to find ways to enjoy cycling.
Yeah, if people don't know where those trails are, if you get behind the cross-country course, I think it's the U of I's cross-country course, that's where a lot of the trails interact through there. It's out
in Iowa City also.
Yeah, in Iowa City. So anyway, on these websites, they go ahead, trail maps, and the whole Johnson County, all the cities, all the communities, it's just an unbelievable area for cycling.
It is, and it's growing.
It's good. Definitely keep growing. Do you want to talk about some of the events coming up? I know. Is there a McBride Fat Tire Classic?
Yeah, awesome. You mind pulling that up? It's Sugar Bottom Bikes Lake McBride Classic. Click on that.
Is that on the trail by the Round Barn? Or no, that's out by the McBride Golf Course.
Right. It goes around. It starts and ends at McBride Golf Course, and it goes around Lake McBride. It's a 30-mile approximately race, and very well organized. It's organized by Sugar Bottom Bikes staff. They've been doing it for, I think, 6 or 8 years. This will be my 3rd year doing it, just trying to get a little bit faster every year. But you really feel like you've accomplished something after going on that race. The first year I did it, it was -5 degrees, and I wasn't mechanically inclined, so I had a flat rear tire that was almost as flat as it could be the last 9 miles. So, I mean, imagine every inch you had to, it was just pedal, pedal, pedal. But really felt like I accomplished something after finishing.
Is that on groomed trails?
It is. So they groom them with snowmobiles. So they'll have a lot of snowmobiles that'll groom the trails for you. So There's official groomers that groom, and they probably did some of that as well. But like, here's an example. So that's on that picture you're showing. By the way, talking about how mountain bikers are special people, check out some of these guys. Snow and ice in their beards, big tires and bikes. So yeah, it's quite a group. But there'll be 200 people. So this isn't something that 9 people do, and it's only an elite group. There'll be 200 racers in February 11th. This race is coming up in a few weeks from all over that come. It's one of the best fat bike races in the area. So it's exciting. You should.
Hopefully, it won't be 5 below or 10 below.
Right. Yeah. It's a wide variety of conditions. Last year it wasn't nearly as cold. Made it much more enjoyable, but it's always a challenge and something I recommend for people to have a fat bike. It's a lot of fun.
So
and again, the community is great. You meet it afterwards. You're at the McBride Golf Course. It's a big kind of party afterwards. Everybody shares their stories of where they crashed or how they trained for this, and it's just a real fun group.
It's hard work, but it's fun in the end.
Yeah,
so you're glad, and it's an accomplishment. You got it done. You go inside and have some fun with all the other folks that participated.
Yep.
So, what other events do you have coming up? Anything else that you want to share here with us?
Let's see. The Iowa City area has a few of those mountain bike races, and the Sugar Bottom Scramble and the Sugar Cubed Marathon are both coming up. Those are towards May, and the reason I mention them this far in advance is that they have different divisions for different levels of competition. There's a novice division that's geared towards people that are doing their first year of racing. And that's how I started and probably finished towards the back, but loved it. Like you mentioned, everybody in the race was very polite and helpful. There's not a competitive, a difficult situation. I mean, everybody is just trying it out themselves. And you get to use the trails locally that everybody enjoys. You're in a competitive situation, so it is a bike race. And they keep track of places to finish, and there's awards and things, but it's a very well-run event that's available for all skill levels. And they have kids races. My wife did 3 races this year too. She was a novice, but really got into it. Maybe look at some of the pictures later. It's been fun. It's a nice family.
Pictures.
Yeah, you bet.
Pictures you brought your family.
Sure.
And I saw your daughter here recently in Arizona. She was riding with you.
Yep. It's been a lot of fun. So there's one. So here we're at Fall Color Festival. This is actually a race in Wisconsin, but the reason I show it is I'm trying to say it's a family. It could be a family event. So this mountain bike race, typically mountain bike races are 10 to 15 miles. A lot of these races that have novice divisions have 5-mile races. So with Jen just being new to racing, she wanted to do the 5-mile race, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to do it with you. So we rode together on a 5-mile race and just had a blast.
Good.
So that's a good one. This is last year's Lake McBride Fat Bike Challenge. That's me there. Goggles, gloves, long, obviously thermal gear of all kind. But and then this is the Snaggy Ridge. I think you mentioned that. So last year, this is placed 3rd place in the 25-mile distance race, and had a real good experience there. But that's another one of the best organized races in the area. There were, I don't know how many hundred of people that went to this Snaggy Ridge based out of Tipton, but highly recommend it. And the 25-mile race is they're all well organized, but you can't get lost. There's plenty of people around to help volunteer and help you through it. Great race for beginners to elite riders. It's kind of my favorite. This is the peak of my racing season was actually in the Black Hills, kind of where I had raced before, but this is actually a picture of me in the Dakota 5.0. It's a 50-mile, fairly extreme bike race that goes up and down 3 different mountain peaks in the Black Hills. So that was my highlight of the season was finishing that race.
Great.
And then here's Core 4. I sent you a blurry pic. I apologize, but you can see here, these are the type of bike you use. So myself, I'm a second there. The first rider, which by the way is Mike Frazier, he's the head of the I-Corps and does a lot of volunteering. Received a Bravo Award a couple years ago for his volunteering for the cycling community. But you can see on these bikes, we've got flat bars. You've got 38 to 40 millimeter width tires. And then behind us, you got a couple guys with drop bar bikes. So I decided for me as kind of still a sort of beginning cyclist, I wanted to have a flat bar bike to have more control in those single track technical sections. But you lose a little aerodynamics when you do that. So the guys behind me, as you can see, have the drop bar bikes. A little bit more aerodynamic, but a little bit harder to control. It's kind of the beauty of that Core 4 race is it's different for everyone, depending on what your strengths and weaknesses are and what you're trying to do. The bike choice is specific to you. And there's cyclocross. This is City Park. So that's City Park in Iowa City. There's the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Yep. And just going through there, that's a gravel bike or a cyclocross bike. And you see some folks way towards in the picture as well. But well-attended races, really well organized. This group of volunteers locally that host these races is very diverse. They do hosting of gravel, mountain bike, fat bikes, cyclocross. And the community that follows each is very large and very welcoming. So I think the variety of pictures here just kind of shows you can go from not riding a bike for 25 years to really getting into it, enjoying all that the area has to offer.
How's your cyclocross bike different than a gravel bike? A little thinner tire?
Yeah, and the ergonomics of it are a little bit different. So in cyclocross, you shoulder the bike some for uphill. So that cyclocross bike has a little bit of a bowed top tube for easier shouldering, whereas a gravel bike has a flatter top tube. Now, I'm not an expert, so real experts are probably laughing at me trying to explain the difference, but that's what I have noticed. Otherwise, there are a lot of similarities. Gravel bikes and cyclocross bikes are very similar, and I think most people probably use the same bike for both, but there are some specific differences. Yeah.
Do you have anything else? This has been great. I think the moral of the story, I think we could probably keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Because I appreciate your excitement. And by the way, in those pictures, you look shredded. So
hey, well, it's been
your body type's
renaissance
changed the
for
last few
me.
years.
And it's hard to find something that is enjoyable that's cardio or fitness-based. And cycling has done it for me. I've done running, not enjoyable. It's obviously great for your health, but it's also harder on your joints. Cycling has been a fun way, a competitive way to get into shape and stay into shape, do some races, and get with a community of folks. I just highly recommend it, and there's never a time that's not a great time to start. So anybody that's listening that's remotely interested in cycling, I hope we've done something to pique your interest, because there's all kinds of ways to get involved.
So now when you plan a vacation, you got to plan it around a bike, right?
Going to Bentonville, Arkansas for spring break, the mecca of mountain biking.
Right.
So, you hit the nail on the head.
Well, Jim, it's been great. I appreciate your time. Gary. And I just challenge everybody, get on your bike and have some fun. And we got a great community to ride in.
So look forward to seeing everybody out in the trails.
Get after it.
You betcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.